Welcome back to page 121. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about an open table versus a closed table and how you can run each style. I'll define what the open and closed table are. And this video is being made at the request of a couple of different commenters on Facebook and on other videos I've done, where they asked me to talk about how you would run specifically an open table. And one specific viewer wanted to see how I would run an open table for Traveler. And in fact, I have run open tables for Traveler many, many times. So I'll go into a little bit of how I did my games, what my thought process was, and everything. An open table can apply to any game, and I'll explain what that means and why. But I did choose to do this about Traveler because I had one viewer specifically request that I talk about Traveler as an open game. I will talk about D&D a little bit also as an open game table or a closed game table. I will talk a little bit about that, but this is primarily going to be focused on Traveler. So today on page 121, open table versus closed table. Before we get into the topic, I shot some footage for a setup I did with my Tinker Turf set. I got an expansion set, so I have even more platforms and beams and such. And I did a setup for a D20 Star Wars game we were playing that night. So I shot the footage, so I'm just going to put it on here for you guys to enjoy, and then I'll get to the topic at hand. Tonight's game is Star Wars. Using the Tinker Turf, I got an expansion set for it, which gave me more platforms, going up and over the train, and I've got various Jedi wandering around. This isn't actually the scenario for tonight. I just grabbed some Jedi figures and threw them on the table. But yeah, this is the setup. Oh, there's two Jedi fighting on the train. I'll pull back and give a better view of the whole setup. And there we go. And Darth Maul hiding over here. So, just a nice little setup for the game tonight. Obviously going to be lots of combat. We haven't played Star Wars D20 in a little while, so looking forward to it. The game is going to be that my Jedi guys, who are all about 7th or 8th level now, are going to be dealing with some Mandalorians who, for reasons, are coming to get them. And just for grins, the old Star Wars Dark Side Sourcebook random villain generator, and then, of course, the character sheets. So there's 3 Jedi playing tonight, and there you have it. So there's my Tinker Turf setup for Star Wars, the D20 role-playing game. So an open table versus a closed table. What is it? I have to admit, I was not familiar with the term open table when I first got those comments. I had to actually look it up and find out, thank God Google's around. Google is our friend. And I Googled it and I found out an open table and a closed table. I found out what the definitions are. So first I'm going to talk about a closed table. What a closed table would be if I have a set adventure for a set number of players and specific players. In other words, I play primarily with my son Pat, my wife Jerry, Craig, and Roy. If I were to do a closed table with them, I would say, okay, I'm only going to have the 4 of you in here, and we're going to run this adventure. And when my son Adam comes home from college for a visit, he can't play in this campaign. This campaign's just for us. So that's what a closed table would be. There's nothing wrong with gaming with a closed table. It gives you an opportunity to really dial in on characters and get some fine granular character development. Plus the players interact with each other beyond being the people they are. They start interacting with their characters more. And I have run closed tables in the past, although honestly it's been quite a while. I ran a closed campaign in the early 80s. I talk about in another video, the low-level D&D Magic tips video, where I talk about the legacy campaign I did, where I gave out very powerful magic items at to brand new characters, with the idea of keeping it just those characters in a closed campaign. So that, in my mind, is a really good example of a closed campaign. A lot of gaming these days is closed campaigning. So you have a set number of people that are going to come over on a set day, they're going to play for a set time, and you're going to adventure through, finish the adventure, and then go on to another group. So that's a closed table, and I have run closed tables. Now an open table. An open table is anyone can come in and anyone cannot be there for a night. So if I'm playing on Tuesday and I expect 5 people, but I only have 3 show up and I run the game anyway, that's an open table. We do play primarily open table here. If we are in a situation where one person can't make it for whatever reason, I'll usually just go forward with the game and that character just won't be there that night. The only time I'll really make an exception to that is if it's a campaign where that character is key to the campaign. Then I'll go ahead and I'll probably hold that game and run something else in the time that they're absent. We all have lives. We all have other things that sometimes come up that we have to do. We can't just make the gaming night. Those happen. When I have that happen, unfortunately, that cancels the game because 95% of the time I'm running the game. And 100% of the time I'm hosting the game. But sometimes, a bad day at work, my wife won't want to play. She'll sit one out. That's not a problem. That's an open table. The other idea of open table would be to physically run a table at an open space like a game store or a convention. I've done both, where you just take all comers. Game store that I used to be associated with back in the late 90s. This was during the Mark Miller era of Traveler, just the tail end of that, and then the GURPS era of Traveler. I actually ran an open table for about a year and a half at that store, and I did both Classic Traveler with a little Mega Traveler thrown in one campaign, and then the other campaign was GURPS Traveler. And that store, for whatever reason, was big on GURPS. The guy who ran the store was a big GURPS guy, and he kind of brought in a crowd, and it was a big GURPS store. And I've run GURPS, a couple of different things. I've run GURPS Traveler. Not a real fan of the system. I feel it's too limiting. But either way, I've run the campaigns, and what I would do is I would sit down at the table, and I would know I'd have, 2 or 3 of my regulars were going to be there. It's a Tuesday night. They're going to be there. But what I would have is a bunch of character sheets handy for people who wanted to sit down and play. Maybe they played in another game with me. Maybe it was the first time they've ever even heard of Traveler. So I would do a quick tutorial on how to play the game, and I would let them pick it up as we played. Fortunately, 2 Dice Traveler, Classic Traveler, and Mongoose Traveler 2nd Edition, in my opinion, are very intuitive. They're very easy to teach. For combat, you're looking for an 8 or greater on 2 Dice 6 after modifiers. What are modifiers? Here's your modifiers. That's it. I want to accomplish a task. I have to have this target number on 2 Dice 6 plus modifiers. It's a pretty intuitive system. Once I found once the players have actually been into the system a little bit and they've just been exposed to it for the first hour or so, they're able to pick up the system and run it no problem. So as far as running the game, I'll give the player character the sheet. I'll do a quick thumbnail sketch of who the character is. Oh, you're a former scout. You served 4 terms. These are what your stats mean. Here's your skills. I do a brief explanation of each skill, and then we just start playing. I don't bog down the game with teaching this new person the game. I let them pick it up as they go, and of course answer any questions that they have. I've taught many, many people how to play Traveler with this method. At that old club, I used to, when I ran my table, I was doing it weekly for about a year and a half. Almost weekly for about a year and a half. Between the 2 game systems, I taught a lot of people how to play Traveler and GURPS Traveler, and I found this method to be the best. When I've taught my group, my regular core group, a new version of Traveler, as I just exposed them to Mongoose Traveler 2nd Edition, when I've shown them that, it's been pretty easy to explain. I've used the same method I discussed. So now as to actual gameplay, how would I go about actually running the game while we're in a situation where somebody's brand new to the game? Well, what I do is I try to keep the rules kind of light. You almost go to a Cepheus type style on this. And again, light doesn't mean inferior. Light just means lighter rules. Cepheus, the gem of Cepheus, is the rules are actually lighter. It's easier for somebody to sit down, pick up, and run with. It's easier to set up because there are less actual rules you have to worry about. So I'll run my Traveler game like that. I'm not going to bury them in a bunch of different initiative modifiers. Quick draw, which is something I'm adding from the field catalog. I'm not going to bury them in a quick draw scenario where I'm going to add that to the initiative. I'm going to pull that out. I'm going to only have the initiative be their modifier being their dexterity or their intelligence. So I'm going to try to keep things nice and simple for the new player and let them enjoy it. The other thing I've always found with a close or an open table, whatever your game you're running, is start it with some action. Dump them in a firefight. In D&D, dump them in an encounter. The first few minutes, you want something going on. You want them to get invested in what they're doing, get excited about what they're doing, and then the combat will teach them the skills. So it's kind of the deep end way of playing, but actually I've found the most successful way to actually indoctrinate somebody to a new game is to just put them into combat and let them go. So open tables now are pretty rare, unfortunately, for a lot of games because of the world situation right now. I do know that there is a hobby store not too far from my house that is opening up their gaming tables again in June, if all things stay the same, stay level. And I am hoping to be able to go ahead and sit and run a little Mongoose Traveler at those tables. I've already discussed it with my regular group and said, hey, would you come and support me and be players and kind of be shills for me to bring people in? And they said, sure, they'd be happy to. So we're gonna, if we're able to, starting in June or July, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna run a game there to get some new people in and let people see what Traveler is and whether they like it or not. So I'm excited about that. I don't have any details on that, so there's nothing further I can say right now. I'll have to see how it goes. The other thing about an open table is you have to be ready for people to stand there and watch. I don't mind that. I never mind people that stand and watch. You are also going to have to be ready for people that stand and kibitz. They don't want to play. They want to tell everybody how to play. You have to be dealing with that. It's kind of like having a heckler if you're a stand-up comedian. You have to deal with it. They don't mean to be obnoxious. They're not trying to interfere with the game. They're just voicing their opinions on what you should or shouldn't do. That's fine. Everyone has opinions, and that's fine. As long as it's done in a productive way, where they're just throwing out a little quip here and there, I don't mind it, and I don't even address the person as far as, hey, don't do that. I let them be part of it, even if they don't want to engage in the game. If it gets overbearing, where they're trying to tell us how to play, what to do, what we're doing wrong, I'll take that person aside and say, hey, knock it off. I've never, ever actually had to do that. I've, cautioned one or two guys, hey, come on, we're playing, you decided not to play. But that's the worst I've ever had to go with it. So don't be afraid of having spectators or hecklers. They're not sitting there judging everything you do. They're not judging you as a GM. They're just standing there because they have some time on their hands and they want to watch you play. They're potential future players. As long as they're not obnoxious about it, let them play. The other thing about an open table is you're going to get some players you just don't mesh with. Oh well. You're the GM. Put on your big boy pants and run the game the best you can. Now, if somebody's destroying the game, that's different. But I'm talking about a guy that just for whatever reason that you're just not really interfacing with properly. They're just not your type of person. You're not their type of DM, their type of person. That happens. You have to be ready for that as well. And you have to just say, well, I'm not a bad GM. That was just kind of a rough part of the game. I don't believe I ever run a bad game, so to speak. I never tell myself it was a bad game. I tell myself, well, that one could have gone better. It's just how I GM. I try to keep my mindset a little more positive than negative. I try to dwell on the positives whenever I can. And when I finish a game, I always review it in my mind. And I go, how was that good? How could it be better? Was it a good game? Could I have improved it? And always I find ways to improve. But I also find ways to really enjoy it. We played the D20 Star Wars not too long ago. And for reasons, the bad guys were riding on a high-speed maglev train, magnetic levitation train, going over 200 miles an hour. Yes, I use miles per hour. And my players were aware of when this train would be coming by, and they said, well, let's just cut the track. And well, wait a minute. Well, they cut the track. Train ended up everywhere. The bad guys were the only ones on it. It was a freight train, automated systems and everything. They didn't kill any innocent bystanders in the area or anything. But they did turn my game on its ear because I didn't expect them to do that. I had this big final battle with the big boss, and the big boss hit a post doing 200 miles an hour. I laughed very hard at that. I congratulated them all the way around on great innovative thinking, and the game ended 20 minutes early. So it happens sometimes. I look back on that game, and I laughed my tail off. So you just have to be ready for it. Players are going to think of things you didn't think of. And I kind of painted myself in a corner on that one, and it ended up being a great outcome. So that's all I've got to say. I'll get off my soapbox now. I hope you found this informative. I'm a big fan of open table. Our D&D game is routinely open table when a guy can't make it or whatever. Uh, I'm not so buried in my story that I can't live with an inconsistency of this player wasn't here, but he was here. Story-wise, we just pretend they were there the whole time. I've never found it disruptive to my role-playing experience, and my players enjoy it as well. Plus, it takes pressure off if a guy just can't make it. It takes pressure off of having the obligation to be there. If they can't make it, they can't make it. It's never a problem. So that's it for today from page 121, my open and closed table concepts. I hope you find this useful. If you did, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.